we need to have the routine, and we need to have the reward. And the reward is extremely important, because if the reward is powerful, then we will remember it.
Liraz Margalit, thank you so much for joining me on my show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm especially good now because I'm very excited for this talk, because I'm going to learn over these next 20 minutes as much as I can about behavioral economics, especially and building products for customers in the digital age. I have a true passion for behavioral economics. I got to spend a few months very close with Dan Ariely at Irrational Labs. So I'm excited to learn about your experiences and your teaching. You're also a university lecturer at the IDC for many years, and you're a strategic advisor to many companies. Liraz, give me the overview. Who are you and why behavioral economics?
Okay, great. As you mentioned, my name is Liraz Margalit. I have a PhD in psychology. I'm specialized in decision-making processes, cognition, behavioral economics. And over the past few years, I've been utilizing models from cognitive psychology, behavioral economics, and neuropsychology to better understand how customers behave in the digital world. And what I'm truly passionate about is the differences between the online world and the offline world. And I think that sometimes we are not aware, but we behave completely different online and offline.
Right.
And I'm really excited to learn the influences of the technology on our behavior, our emotions, and our feelings.
So let's start from the basics. Let's start from the foundation. Behavioral economics, what is the study of behavioral economics?
Okay. So actually, today we are talking about behavioral design, but let's start with behavioral economics. And we started off with an assumption. Actually, it's a very logical assumption. And the assumption is that we are rational human beings, that we have rational decision, and moreover, that we are in control of our decisions, offline and online. And the thing is that we have a defense mechanism, meaning that we really like to think that our decisions, our behavior are rational. And the thing is that we are not begin to imagine the effect of cognitive biases, of environmental cues, of our emotions on the way we make decisions. And you know what, Michael, when we are talking about the online arena, this problem is getting much bigger, because...
Wait, Liraz, before we get to the online, give me some examples. What happens in my day-to-day life, whether it's when I go buy wine at the store or when I choose a subscription for The Economist paper or digital? Give me some examples of where do I see irrationality. And I'm telling you, I am the most irrational person I'll ever meet. You can ask my girlfriend. She'll testify for this. But I want you to convince everybody else listening that we are all irrational.
So let me give you two quick examples. Yes. So I work with a company named Allianz. It is an insurance company.
Yes.
And you know that they have their policy. And they wanted to ask people, they usually on a regular basis ask people a declaration of their health. And one of these questions is, do you smoke? And the thing is that most people, interestingly, say that they are not smoking. And of course, they're lying. So we wanted to understand how we can make sure that people are saying the truth, because it costs a lot of money to the company. So I suggested to frame the question differently. So instead of asking people, do you smoke? I suggested asking, when was the last time you smoked?
Right. What is the difference? Why are those two questions ridiculously different?
So the thing is that if I ask you when is the last time you smoked, that means that I acknowledge the fact that you smoke, and that's fine and that's okay. And now you belong to a group of smokers, so that makes it okay. And now if I know that, and if I make you realize that I know you are smoking, it's very hard lying about it. So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. That's the whole idea of behavioral economics. It's about framing things differently. So we have the famous question of Tversky and Kahneman. So let's say that you decided to go to a movie, and now you decided to buy the ticket, let's say online, and you come to the movie, you come to the theater, and then you realize that you lost your ticket. What are you going to do? Now, bear with me. I'm going to ask this question differently. The same question, but differently, okay? So let's say that you decided to see a movie, and this time you decided that you're not going to buy the ticket online, so you decided to go to the theater and buy the ticket there. So you arrive to the theater, and then you open up your wallet, and you found out that you are missing a $50 or I don't know, $20. And then you ask yourself, okay, what am I going to do now? Am I going to buy another ticket? So guess what? In the first scenario, people usually, they are not going to buy another ticket, but in the second scenario, they are going to buy another ticket.
And why is that? So why don't they? Yeah.
Because in the first scenario, they feel like they spend, like if a ticket costs $20, they feel like they spent $40 on one ticket. But interestingly, in the second scenario, they don't correlate the money.
They don't group them together.
Exactly. Mentally, meaning, so they don't associate the money that lost and the ticket to the theater, and then it's fine to buy another ticket. But if we think about it, this is not a rational behavior, because we are talking about the same question,
economics,
the same amount of money. Yeah, exactly.
And so Liraz, just like these examples, there are hundreds more out there that from every part of our lives. So I was giving my own example of going to the wine store and understanding that human behavior tends to go to purchase the median dollar amount for a bottle of wine. But then if marketers are smart about it and realize this, they can just add an extra expensive bottle of wine at the end, and all of a sudden most customers shift to the little bit more expensive option. But Liraz, I want to now steer a little bit away from these general behavioral economics examples and talk a little bit more broadly about your work in the digital age. So a lot of these are tangible, physical examples in our daily lives, but what is different as we progress into the 21st century in terms of behavioral economics and online?
So the differences when we're talking about our environment, the technology environment, is that we are talking about the same effects of behavioral economic, but in a practical manner. And today we know that so many tech companies actually adopted those principles of behavioral economic, but I have to say that sometimes it's not in a very ethical way. Let me give you 2 examples.
Please.
So the first example is that to use the same principle that we were discussing right now, and this principle is called framing or relative thinking, or anchoring. You can name it in different ways, but the idea is that the way we frame the decision, the way we frame the digital environment, actually is going to change our behavior. And the thing is that in the digital, it's very, very easy to change the digital environment. And let's say that you get up in the morning, and you know that most people today, when they get up in the morning, the first thing that they are going to do is to check up their smartphone, to check up if they have new notification. And let me tell you something, sometimes they do it even in the middle of the night. So God forbid, maybe they have such an important notification that they have to check it. So now, let me give you an imagine. And what I'm talking about now, I like to call it the power of the default. What is the default? Default is that you open up your smartphone and you see all those notifications. But imagine this. Imagine that you get up in the morning and you see this, your smartphone, your nice smartphone says, good morning, Michael, and have a nice day. And maybe he's going to give you a flower or something. So these are two different ways where we can frame your good morning environment. The reason that we choose to give you those notifications is actually a message. And this message is, look, all you missed when you were sleeping. And that means don't sleep. If you're going to sleep, you are going to miss so many things. So don't sleep. And of course, we don't consider this. Why? Because we are so used to it. Because behavioral design is embedded in a transparent way in our everyday life. So we didn't even give it a thought that things could be different, right? Or let's say the big, let's say, I would say the big influencer of behavioral economics or manipulator, Booking.com. So Booking.com has this way of, let's say that you are looking up for a hotel.
One room left. Only 2 rooms left. Act fast. So, all of that is incredibly fascinating, and all these examples of behavioral economics, but you're a strategic advisor to quite a few companies. And what I'm extremely curious about is how practically do you go in and do you incorporate this academic research of behavioral economics into everyday startups? Because I look at myself as a young entrepreneur. I'm going to create my own startup. Now I'm very passionate about behavioral economics, so maybe I'll have a little bit more experience and knowledge than the average person starting a company. But what are the ways in which you come and help these companies, like you mentioned with Alliance, and what can founders and entrepreneurs do to become better engaged with this content?
Okay, great question. So what I like to do with startups is habit forming. And by habit forming, we mean how to take a product and form a habit out of it. Because the thing about habits is really interesting, because when there is an initiate behavior and when there is a habit, we are talking about two different brain areas, because habit is unconscious. And that means that you don't need to think about what you are doing. So let's say you are going on Facebook. Sometimes we don't even consider this. This is not where we're talking about rationality. So when we are talking about habit, this is not a rational action. And this is why we eager to turn every behavior, every actually set of behaviors into a habit. So let's say that you have a new app.
Why are habits so strong, by the way? Why are habits so strong?
Okay, so the thing is that our brain will try to take every action and turn it into a habit, because habit does not require cognitive resources, mental resources from our brain. So when we lock out our door, when we brush our teeth in the morning, we don't think about it. And if you think about it, you can lock your door, and then you can think about like your presentation that you need to present today to your boss, and you can think about who is going to pick up the kids from the kindergarten. So your brain is free to think about other tasks, and that is why habits are so important. The thing is that when companies come to me, they think that they can turn every behavior into a habit, and that is not correct, because there are behaviors that you cannot turn into a habit. And when we are talking about habits, we have the habit loop, meaning that we need to have a trigger to the behavior, we need to have the routine, and we need to have the reward. And the reward is extremely important, because if the reward is powerful, then we will remember it, and then we want to actually repeat the behavior again. And if we will repeat the behavior several times, and it's not 21 days like people like to say, it depends on the actual behavior, then your product will become a part of the customer's routine, and this is the holy grail.
So when you join a startup as an advisor, do you come in just one time? You're just saying, "Oh, okay, you're trying to do X, Y, Z. Here is the habit. Here is how you do it," or is it a more thorough process along the way?
No, because we have many habits. Every click is a habit.
Yeah.
So we need to think about the specific rewards. But there is another thing that we need to do these days, and we are talking about personalization. And now we are in the world of personalization. And the thing about personalization, that for so many years we are trying to reach that point, that level, but I really believe that on the last 2 years, we were able to have some progress in personalization. And by personalization, I mean that when you walk or when you land on a website or app, you will have a different experience compared to me.
Right.
And that means that we need to get to know our user. And that doesn't mean demographic. I'm not talking about demographics at all. I'm talking about personality, and I'm talking about decision-making style. So today, I can take your Facebook profile, for example, and I can know who you are only based on your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn. So actually, I don't need so much information from you. And even if you think about the actual behavior, the actual traces that we live in the online world, we can learn so much from those traces. So let's say that you fill in a form. So I can tell using behavioral analytics, I can tell how you type, how fast or slow you type. So if you are lying, I know that you will type slower, for example. And I know if you decided to skip on a field and then come back to it. And that means that I want to see what you're doing and why did you actually behave this way. And sometimes I actually plant manipulation. And let's say that there is a button or a click that doesn't work. I like to see how people actually click on this button, meaning that are they eagerly click one after time, or are they patient? And that means a lot about their behavior, about who they are.
Wow, Liraz, this is fascinating. I can ask you 100 more questions about this, but unfortunately, I called my show 20-minute leaders, so I have to uphold to that. But I want to thank you again for being so generous with your time. It's been such a pleasure and an honor, and I'd love to continue learning more from your work and hopefully talk to you when I have my own startup. But before we leave, I need 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Right. So the 3 words are: it's all about passion.
It's all about passion. Again, it completely exudes through the screen. I love the work that you're doing. I love behavioral economics, and I think it's just so fascinating to think about the rationality and irrationality of human decision making, and the fact that you're taking this into a deep dive into the digital world and thinking critically about how we do things, I think is remarkable. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward to remaining in touch.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.